All right, everyone, we start off today with a very telling story, which is the slurry of news articles that you've seen claiming that Donald Trump is, if he's reelected, he's going to weaponize the DOJ, he's going to use the FBI to go after anyone who criticized him, and, things attendant to that. While it would be basically the Biden admin's fault were that to happen, because the Biden administration has weaponized all these bureaus already to go after political dissidents. We've seen this. We know that this is happening. We've got proof of it. Link in the description, archived, of course, takes Donald Trump's recent statements out of context, which is that the only way I can interpret what he's actually saying, again, in link in the description, and this is what led to the articles being written in the first place, the only way I can interpret that is that he's referring to Joe Biden. That is that he's referring to Joe Biden weaponizing bureaucratic agencies. He's sort of speaking as though he were Joe Biden in that situation. He's like, oh, well, if I was down a lot and losing, and I might as well just indict people and go after them with the FBI and stuff. That's what Biden is doing. He's not threatening to do what Biden is doing. He's effectively rehashing what Biden is doing in Biden's own words as though he were Joe Biden. That's the only linguistic way that I can interpret that particular clip. That's number one. Number two, there's another reason not to worry about Donald Trump, the evil dictator. We've seen what happens when he's in office. He doesn't even get the cooperation of large swaths of his own party, let alone of the federal bureaus. He was repeatedly lied to by the FBI and undercut by them. And is still, of course. He was lied to by his own envoy to Syria about troop totals. Directly countermanding the commander-in-chief apparently is not a punishable offense anymore. I don't know whatever happened to that because the story miraculously disappeared. If Trump can't even get people that are within his own partisan core to go along with him on common sense public policy like, hey, people partially elected me to fortify the border, instead of the election, of course. So I want money for that. And Congress said no. For years they said no. Donald Trump said, very well, I'm dipping into discretionary spending because it's a national security concern. He had to drag that through court for almost a year before he could get the money cleared. When DeSantis fans ramble about not enough of the wall was built, well, don't blame Trump because he started attempting to appropriate that money on day one. What ended up happening is he was blocked by members of the legislature, including the originally Republican-controlled House of Representatives. He had to use an executive workaround. I'm sure he would have rather have gotten a clean spending bill that gave him that allocated that money. He wasn't able to get that. The idea that Donald Trump is going to weaponize the FBI, which has been gunning for him this whole time, is asinine. The idea of Donald Trump, the American would-be dictator, is the exact opposite of reality, and so are these news articles. This is propaganda of the sheerest sort. You're taking what Biden is doing, and you're projecting it as though it would be a really big problem if somebody else were doing it, namely Donald Trump, but it's already being done. So the articles accidentally indict Joe Biden as an authoritarian wannabe dictator, because that's who is being referred to in Donald Trump's statement. It's not referring to any intent that Donald Trump self-professedly has. And he couldn't be batshit enough to think that the bureaus are going to do that for him anyway. Oh, they're going to prosecute Hunter, and they're going to prosecute the FBI. The FBI is going to investigate itself, and it's going to kick out a bunch of agents that involve themselves with attempting to censor law-abiding citizens on Twitter for mud disinfo purposes and stuff. It's like the J. Edgar Hoover era. Well, if you weren't friendly with J. Edgar Hoover, I don't think that he was going to move mountains for you. Some people have found out the hard way what happens when you run up too much against the deep state before. Donald Trump is not the first one in U.S. history to have this particular issue. He's not talking about his intent, even though it would be precedented, and so you couldn't complain too much about it, at least from a moral perspective. He's not professing that he's going to persecute people. He's referring to Joe Biden already doing that, exactly. Right now, you've got courts dragging Trump's kids, who are not elected officials, onto the stand and crucifying them. All of his associates, people who have worked with him as lawyers, people who have been campaign advisors, and everything else under the sun, an entire network of people being singularly persecuted, while other people do things that are similar or far, far worse, and we don't get any closure on it. I'm still waiting for the Epstein Island client list. For example, one of the major crimes of the entire century thus far has gone completely under the radar, despite the major figure in the case totally killing himself under weird circumstances. And then Maxwell, of course, gets her sweetheart deal, where she goes to the low-security facility, where I'm sure that there are plenty of troubled young ladies for her to predate upon. We're not going to get closure on it either. It's like fucking Gulf of Tonkin or something like that. Yeah, 50 years from now, we'll get a report that's been redacted when half the people that remembered are long dead and nobody cares anymore. Oh yeah, by the way, here's a list of people who went to Epstein Island. I would think that kind of crime is more meaningful than artificially upgraded business fraud from years ago that's already accounted for. Or the RICO case that makes absolutely no sense, involving racketeering charges with what you're even alleging is spurious to the point where even liberal commentators expect the case to fall through. They're not even, by the way, happy necessarily that the Fulton case even exists. The Mar-a-Lago Papers case, again, something that other presidents have literally done, and people in the contemporary sense that didn't have presidential privilege, like Mike Pence and Joe Biden himself, they get off scot-free. Nobody really cares. Well, their team sent in the paperwork, so it doesn't matter that it was taken illegally because they weren't president at the time. But Donald Trump broke the law, because despite being president at the time, he allegedly showed off one of the papers, and it was secured the way we told him we wanted it secured, but at the same time we're still mad at him, so we're going to charge him anyway. These cases are all persecution. I think people are beginning to see through it. I think that polling is beginning to reflect that. I love when people point to the one poll that shows Donald Trump loses a lot of support if he's actually convicted of a crime. I'm doubting that because I was told that indictment would bring him down. I was told he should already effectively be out. Well, it didn't happen. He rose in popularity. Hell, he can lose 5 points of support at this point nationally and it wouldn't even affect the race, probably. He'd probably still win. So I don't even care. What the legacy media's propaganda here is to take Trump's words completely and entirely out of context. I personally would not have a problem with him attempting to actually go after the real criminals using the force of the DOJ, etc. And I'm a classical liberal, so I believe that the DOJ should lose half of its staff and budget, for example. I'll compromise. See, I'm a principled classical liberal. I'm a moderate on the issue. I would only axe about half of the bureaucracy and 90% of the rules that it enforces. I think that we can do that and call it a day, and it would really ease tensions in the country. See, I'm not an anarchist. But while I would be comfortable with that, because he would effectively just be turning the guns around that have already been firing for the last few years, and because it's already precedented, and because it is, unfortunately, at least technically, a power of the president at the moment, Biden certainly misuses it constantly. While that would be fine, and it's not his intent. That's not what he's saying. He's referring to Joe Biden's own actions. It is clear from the way in which he says it that he's not even referring to himself or any particular thing that he has in mind. He's referring to what has been ongoing since Joe Biden's asterisk stewardship began. But they're reporting on it as though Donald Trump is threatening to use the FBI to go after people he doesn't like. Rather ominous. Sounds like something a dictator would do. I agree. It's currently happening as we speak right now. That's about all. Peace out.